Hello everyone, this is Mark Rivera with GenreOnlinenet on YouTube, and today I'm doing a walkthrough, if you will, of Rebel Moon, Heroes and Monsters. This is the second book from Titan Books, I believe is the publisher, that basically is released to cover the artwork and characters and conceptual designs of the Rebel Moon film series. And you may be wondering, well, why did I want to cover this? Well, first off, yeah, Rebel Moon is not a great film by any means. And I still find it to be a curiosity of sorts. And since I reviewed the first book, I felt I owed it to you all to review the second. So let's take a look at it, and at least you get a free look at the book. And if you want it, you can pick it up at Amazon or other booksellers. It has a suggested retail price of about $50, but you can get it for much less than that, trust me. Anyway, like the other book, the cover comes off, and the inside cover is exactly identical to the book itself. So just so you know, so I mean, if you're one of those people that doesn't care much for paper covers, you don't have to worry. So here we go. Now, my interest in Rebel Moon comes down to this. Basically, I'm just curious about what was his thinking? Because, we've already seen a science fiction version of the Magnificent Seven. It's called Battle Beyond the Stars, and it was made with a far less budget, with a great screenplay by John Sayles, special effects by James Cameron, and was produced by Gale Ann Hurd. So we've already seen this sort of movie done already. Not to mention on television there was a Battlestar Galactica version of the Magnificent Seven and so forth. So I don't fault somebody for trying to take something that is basically a classic story being retold. I mean, there's the saying, if you're going to steal, steal from the best. And I'm not saying Zack Snyder is a thief. I don't believe that at all. What I do think, though, is that he was inspired, but his choices were questionable. And this goes beyond this just goes beyond what I think. Let me just get closer for you guys. This goes beyond what I think most people would expect, which is basically there's just things that don't work in the film. And if you're gonna besides mentioning Battle Beyond the Stars, I often think about the movie The Fifth Element, which I mentioned in my last review, because The Fifth Element, while it's never been said officially, it has definitely, I believe, although I can't prove it, some inspiration perhaps from the film Heavy Metal, which is an animated feature film from 1981. First off, Heavy Metal was originally a French science fiction anthology magazine with illustrated stories. Many of the people who worked on Heavy Metal magazine also contributed to The Fifth Element in terms of costume design and so forth. And thirdly, in the movie, you have a ball of evil that is sentient, called the Lochnar. And in the Fifth Element, you have the same exact thing. And then while the characters are very different, in the first story, you have Harry Canyon, who's a cab driver in futuristic New York. He's not in the military, but he's kind of I guess you could say, a self-serving, reluctant hero, and it's a darker story, but nevertheless, those elements bear similarity to the Fifth Element. And the Fifth Element, though, is done very well, though. So I can't say for sure if the Fifth Element was inspired at all from the Harry Canyon and portion, as well as the entire heavy metal animated film based on the elements I've already noted, as well as the magazine. I do think that it's possible. And whereas here we're getting the Magnificent Seven in space, and it just doesn't work. And I think part of the reason for this, the reason why, is one, it's simply too long. Two is the film just doesn't, in any means, really define the universe or its characters beyond the most, thin terms possible. It just makes it very, for lack of a better expression, flat. That's how they sometimes describe characters when you do coverage. And I used to do coverage on screenplays when I was an undergraduate as an intern, and then after college I used to do it as well. I used to get paid for it. It's called a story analyst or a reader. So I used to do that and do coverage and read a lot of good scripts and bad scripts, and then write synopsises, etc., and tell my thoughts. And then based on that, the producer or whatnot, or head of development or developmental creative assistant, whatever title they come up with, would then look at my coverage and then decide whether or not they want to have another person read it, because the odds are that when a screenplay gets sent, especially a screenplay from somebody that's not vetted from an established agency, or basically a screenplay written by someone that they're unfamiliar with, you usually get at least 3 or 4 people reading it before any kind of decision is made as to whether or not it's viable. And that's if the script is decent to good. Probably more like if the script is good, simply because there's a lot of bad scripts out there, just like anything else. Now, I just think that a lot of these, for instance, establishing this resistance against the mother world, it just like the aliens look like knockoffs from Star Trek. Everybody knows about the boring planet that takes place on, where with the slow motion people raking wheat and stuff like that. But that's the least of the film's problems, because you can call that down to pacing. I just think it's the flat characterizations and the fact that the universe is highly derivative and extremely uninteresting as a result. And yet, I must admit that there are some things I do like in it. I like the drop ships, and some of the alien designs, like this one, is cool. It looks interesting. And I just wish that there was more good in it than bad, and unfortunately, that's just not the case, unfortunately. But it's not because that there wasn't it wasn't because Zack Snyder doesn't know what he's doing. It's because nobody was there to try and tell him, look, I don't think this is the right way of doing things. I mean, I really think that he was given not a blank check, but he was given a deal from Netflix, and Netflix basically agreed to fund this thing, hoping that they had a franchise, and instead, well, we'll see what it is. I mean, I don't want to call it something else, but I think you all can fill in the blanks. But I would love to speak to him and ask him about this film, not because I want to rake him over the coals or embarrass him or anything like that. I just would like to know what was he thinking? What were his creative choices? Why would you do what you did in such a way? And how did Lucasfilm react to your initial concept? I mean, that should have been a red flag right there. But unfortunately, this is probably the worst of his indulgences in terms of Snyderisms that he uses. And it's just a shame, because I do think with if you cut this down solid into like a solid 2-hour movie, and you cut out a lot of the unnecessary slow-mo stuff that just doesn't do anything, it could have been a good a good way to pass the time, a good flick, a film that people would not have been reacted so negatively towards. But I think the fact that there was the release and then the release of the director's cuts, which honestly the director's cuts only amplify the problems with the original cut, which is basically it's poorly paced, it's dull, and a lot of the extra violence really does not do anything to improve the story. Violence and showing a little bit of nudity here and there can work if the story warrants it organically. I mean, look at Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers. That's a movie with lots of violence, and it also has nudity in it, but it never feels overdone, and it feels used just enough, because it's a propaganda. It's a send off of a propaganda film. This is not a send off. This is intended to be taken seriously, but instead of using it to make it exciting, he just tried too much to turn this into like his own artistic answer to Star Wars, maybe. And I'm sorry, I liked his version of Justice League a lot. I think that it was very good for what it was. Absolutely, way better. And I don't think anybody would disagree that the Justice League that he did was better than the theatrical version that was released, which was released for certain reasons that he wasn't able to complete the cut that he wanted. And I won't go into it any further because that's his business and that's not his fault. But in the case of this film, he has full control. I mean, it should have been released. If anything, balance it out and release it as one thing. And then just some of the choices, especially like the fact that it really doesn't have a decent ending. It leaves it open for a sequel that I don't think anybody really wants to see. And the fact of the matter that the book and the movie, boy, that's a Freudian slip, right? I mentioned book. The fact that the movie, because of its imperfections, it just it lends itself to mockery. And there are plenty of people that are funnier than me that make those types of videos. I didn't even bother with a video review of the film because I'm a better writer than I am a filmmaker. And I just basically decided, you know what, I'm just going to write a review, post it on my website, and just basically, when the book comes out, I'll give my thoughts when this book came out during the page flip through. So basically, ultimately, the director's cut is not much better, or really just about the same as the theatrical cut, or PG-13 cut, if you will, since it wasn't released theatrically, at least not in a wide. It may have been released for a very brief moment. Perhaps it had a theatrical premiere, but really, the original television broadcast version, it's not much better than that. And I think with just a little bit of reshuffling, could have just cutting it down. It could have been, you could have done it in less than 3 hours for sure. And I think a little over 2 hours and with the correct pacing would be much better. But unfortunately, this is what we got. And so that's why we're looking at a book. Now, I thought this would be more of an art book, but it does give you some background on some of the characters or whatever that you probably would not get otherwise. And this seemed to be more interesting to me because of the fact that, I wanted to know, well, who are these priests? What's their deal, And so I personally was interested in that. That's why I ended up buying this book out of pocket. And, would I recommend this book to other people? Well, obviously, if you hated Rebel Moon to the point that, you want to wipe your ass with it, then no. I don't recommend this book to you. But it looked like the Uruk-hai from the Lord of the Rings films. And then this is, like I said, it looks like a knockoff Star Trek alien or even a knockoff alien from Stargate SG-1. This could have, first off, even with the two books, I think you could have put these books better as one large volume as opposed to two separate books, because here's Pizza the Hut, and it just this is one of the worst alien designs in the film, because I'm not even sure if he's an alien. This design over here, which is more pig-like, seems more interesting than what we actually got. I don't know what the hell happened in the makeup room, but he looks like evil Pizza the Hut. And then there's this place, and I just think also that the designs, like the planet and using the longhouses, etc., it's not very. As far as I know, this has nothing to do with Earth. But I've said this before in the previous video. You could add some more creativity than just creating wooden huts and stuff like that. It could have been more interesting than that. And well, that's really it. I think that the attempt to go slightly steampunk with certain things, again, works in certain areas, but at the same time, there's kind of some silliness to it. It's there because it looks cool, perhaps, but practicality speaking, it just doesn't work. And then the idea that they need to depend upon interdimensional giant women from outer space that give them the energy to jump, to fold space, or whatever it is that they do to get from one part of the galaxy to the next, seems really silly. And I don't know whose beard is worse, the villain's beard or this beard on this makeup beard on Carrie Elways, because Carrie Elways just doesn't look. It looks so fake. It's unbelievable to me. The other thing is this too. If this king was a tyrant, and that's pretty much what he was, up until he had a daughter that somehow re-influenced him, why would we even like him? Why should I feel sorry for this guy? That's something that is just not given. And why has this girl's got special powers? Never explained. And the excuse that, I think he said this on Joe Rogan's podcast, though I could be wrong. So this is just, and I think it's not a fact, but I think his attitude was kind of it's a fantasy film, so I could just make up the rules as I go along, type of thing, or something along those lines. Now, if I'm wrong, I apologize to Mr. Snyder for getting that wrong or whatever. But even in fantasy, you have to follow rules. You have to have established rules how the fantasy world works. Doesn't matter if it's sci-fi fantasy or science fiction. You really do need science fiction or fantasy. Even horror has rules. Like, you just can't have things occurring without having things have some sort of, okay, I know what the rules are here, or when there are no rules, this makes sense. I mean, look at the nightmare world of Freddy Krueger. There's rules. Anything can happen in the dream. But when you're in reality, there's certain limitations that Freddy has. You can pull something out of the dream. You may even be able to pull Freddy out of the dream. And you can get a wound that you may sustain in the dream may appear in your reality. But certain things that Freddy does to his victims in nightmare worlds that he creates only can happen in the nightmares. And there's a clear distinction between that. And so, like, that's an example of a horror film that, even there, as fantastical as it might sound, establishes its own rules and sticks with them. So, yeah, this thing was disgusting, the parasitic alien bug. That's what hurt the world building of this film. And I hate using the word world building because I think it's overused. I mean, it's obvious that he's trying to create something different. It's just a shame that the execution wasn't there. I mean, because, he has a vision, and there's some things that are overdone, especially the slow motion, etc. But those things could have been curtailed. He needs a stronger producer, someone that could say no. You know what I mean? Or really, like, he needs a Gary Kurtz to George Lucas type of person, because his wife, I believe, is a producer, and I think I wonder to myself, what did she really think? Did she think that this film was that great? Well, I don't know, and it is what it is. Now, there are some things I like about the film. I like I don't like the Spider-Woman here, but I do like I like the design of the drop ships. Okay, and I'm a sucker for Space Battleship Yamato, aka Star Blazers, so it's kind of cool to see the Dreadnought resembling that, especially since we do have a live-action Star Blazers film, and it's very good. We don't have a live-action American version that yet I still think could be made, and maybe even made better than the Japanese version. And that's not to say anything bad about the Japanese version. It's just that certain creative choices they made, I think, could have been done better. I can understand why some people may be resistant to it, but that movie was made before the MCU took off. So I'll put it to you that way, without going into too much detail. The Star Blazers film has aliens in it that are the cartoon has aliens that are basically humanoid with blue skin and green skin, and I'm thinking of the movie. I'm thinking of the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, how pretty much in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the aliens for the most part are blue skin, red skin. They're humanoids with different colors. And that's okay, because that's been established in Marvel. Unfortunately, if you do that now in a Star Blazers film, it probably would not be as appreciated. But it is what it is, right? But I still think it's worth pursuing, and I always think with good actors, here's this. I thought this was a machine, but it's actually a living creature. These two tentacle things, and the one good thing about this book is it will give you some background, though. I don't know why this thing, spoilers everybody, I don't know why this thing could blow itself up like a grenade. I don't know why. I'm not even sure if it's mentioned here or not. I mean, because the text basically does go into some of the background on these characters and creatures and whatnot, but it's also very much a making of book with art, with some production design, etc. I think that this would have been better simply as an art book. Period. Art. When you combine an art book and a making of book together, it doesn't always work. And with that, we're coming to the end of this complete walkthrough, which I hope you all appreciate, since now you don't need to buy the book. But if you were curious about it, here it is. But if you still want to buy the book after you've seen it, which is not a bad book, this is nothing wrong with the book, it's just a curiosity to me. And since I covered the first book, I figured I would cover the second book. I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day. Bye-bye.